For most people, the coronavirus lockdown would be a whole lot easier if there were live sports to distract us. But that seems unlikely to happen anytime soon, since the idea of packing thousands of people into a stadium defeats the whole purpose of social distancing. In the interim, however, there are all manner of sports happening online. There's tennis star Roger Federer, who's quarantined in Switzerland, hitting trick shots in the snow, a college swimmer fulfilling her backyard Olympic dream. It's even reached a point where the NBA held a virtual, made-for-TV horse tournament, pitting shooters against one another from remote locations around the country. But there are only so many remote, made-for-Instagram contests one can watch before the desire for human competition and something to gamble on needs to be met. So that raises the question, when will real sports return? It was one of the best times of the year for sports. The NBA and NHL seasons were nearing playoffs, spring training was underway, and the NCAA tournament was approaching. Then, silence.
You quickly realize how much sport influences key chunks of your daily life, of your weekly, monthly, etc., right? And how sometimes you actually plan other things around the sports in people's lives, whether it's at the youth sport level for community or all the way up to the major league sport level, either watching, attending, or sports betting or something like that.
The real gravity of the coronavirus situation didn't hit in the U.S. until early March. First, Utah Jazz center Rudy Gobert tested positive for the coronavirus, and the next day, the NBA announced it was suspending its season. And that same day, the National Hockey League, which plays many of its games in the same arenas as the NBA, announced it would be postponing its schedule.
We've taken a pause. I'm a little hesitant to use the word suspension because our hope and our expectation is when things get back to normal and it's safe and it's prudent, that we can go back and resume the season and ultimately have the Stanley Cup awarded.
Major League Soccer then halted its season, while the U.S. Soccer Federation announced it would cancel friendly matches over coronavirus fears. And that announcement was followed by Major League Baseball slamming the brakes on spring training, as well as the World Baseball Classic qualifier games.
The NCAA, the NBA playoffs, the NHL playoffs, sports that are in the playoff run, that's where the money's made. That's the most profitable time of the year. So those sports are in the toughest position. Things like Major League Baseball, they can delay the season, they can add double headers, they can extend the season. But those sports that are in the playoff run, it's going to be difficult.
The All England Club decided it would cancel Wimbledon due to public health concerns linked to the coronavirus epidemic. The French Open Tennis Championship followed suit by announcing it would move to the fall. And the Boston Marathon, traditionally held on Patriots' Day in April, was moved to September 14th. A few days later, the PGA postponed the Masters until November. And the 2020 Olympics in Tokyo were moved to July of 2021, although recently, the head of the committee couldn't commit to the games starting on time. Professional sports bring in billions of dollars each year to teams and to the peripheral businesses that support or surround venues around the country. But that changes drastically under a lockdown. An ESPN analysis conducted by Patrick Risch of Washington University in St. Louis estimated leagues will lose about $12 billion in revenue. Rhode Island research firm Performance Research estimates major event cancellations and postponements in the U.S. would lead to at least $6 billion in economic losses. And it will be worse the longer the pandemic drags out. The NBA alone could lose over $1 billion. NASCAR took a $680 million hit for the races in Atlanta, Miami, Texas, Bristol, and Richmond. The cancellation of spring training cost Major League Baseball some $200 million. The firm Media Radar estimates delaying opening day could cost the league's broadcasters about $60 million in advertising dollars just over the season's first 3 months. And if the season started and the games played without fans, the league projects it would lose $640,000 per game. At the same time, NHL teams lost about $1.6 million in revenue per team for every canceled home game. And the International Olympic Committee said that delaying the games until 2021 would cost it $800 million. Another major cancellation was the NCAA tournament, a huge cash generator for college sports. Mark Emmert, the NCAA president, told ESPN in March that 85% of the organization's revenue comes from the tournament. More troublesome, the NCAA was slated to send some $600 million to various athletic conferences in the US. Since the tournament cancellation, the NCAA says the amount will be more like $225 million. The result of that is some schools could be forced to make cuts to their athletic budgets. To that end, the University of Cincinnati recently announced it was canceling its men's soccer program due to widespread uncertainty. Aramark supplies a number of sports venues and colleges with food for concessions and cafeterias.
Our traditional business dining, health, campus services, and sports and entertainment are significantly impacted. But at this point in time, campus dining really was beginning to close down for the balance of the year. So we're hopeful that universities will continue to operate going forward in the fall.
And it's not just the service business that could be in trouble. Sports franchise owners whose primary businesses are hotels, casinos, restaurants, or others severely impacted by the lockdown could be looking for a lifeline.
I think you're going to see some leagues and teams, owners who may have to seek some sort of protection. I know nobody wants to talk about government intervention in sports, but either through the banks or through other areas, because that capitalization just isn't as deep as one might think if you weren't in the industry.
What makes it even more difficult is that leagues like the NBA and NHL were both approaching their playoffs.
And the NHL and the MLB and NBA was almost in the middle of their postseasons, which is when their revenue is high because the ratings are high. Everything is more, active. So that hurts. And that's why they're trying to preserve some of it from those two leagues.
The NHL announced plans to resume its season in late May. But first, it issued a 22-page document entitled NHL Phased Return to Sport Protocol that placed stringent limitations on players, coaches, and organizations as a means of ensuring safety. Commissioner Gary Bettman said clubs would begin to open facilities so players could get back on the ice, although he did say that no training camps would begin before July 1st. NASCAR returned on May 17th at Darlington Raceway in South Carolina, but without fans and with stringent requirements for a significantly reduced pit crew. And the PGA Tour will resume its season June 8th through the 14th at Colonial Country Club in Texas.
Our players are eager to return, excited to inspire this country, but also know that in announcing the schedule yesterday that we're going to do so in a safe and responsible way.
There will be no fans on the course. In fact, most leagues have talked about playing games without fans, at least initially.
They're trying to save some of that media revenue. And if they got to play games without fans, they'll take a hit to the gate revenue if it means preserving billions of dollars in media.
The NBA is planning a July 31st return date, with games to be played in Orlando, Florida. The league would hold a short regular season for 22 teams, followed by a tournament that would allow it to crown a champion on or before October 12th. Meanwhile, Major League Baseball, which postponed the World Baseball Classic to 2023 and moved this year's Hall of Fame ceremony to next year, is also exploring options for its season. The owners met in May and reportedly proposed an 82-game season with an October postseason, which would include 14 teams. Teams would carry 30 players with a 20-player taxi squad of minor league athletes that would allow players to be ready if they're called up as an injury replacement. The union countered with its own proposal, according to ESPN, which would allow a 114-game season to begin on June 30th and end on Halloween. Playoffs and the World Series would be played in November, but the owners rejected the proposal and may unilaterally implement a 50-game season as a result. The two sides remain at an impasse over compensation, however, as owners have sought bigger pay cuts due to a lack of revenue from tickets and concessions. The league recently issued a 67-page safety manual that included such precautions as no high fives, masks in the dugout, and a change of baseballs when multiple players touch one. The plan also includes intake screening and frequent testing. Whatever they decide, baseball fans with season tickets are getting impatient. Two in New York recently sued Major League Baseball and its 30 teams, as well as Commissioner Rob Manfred. They want their money back and are trying to start a class action lawsuit to make it happen. The National Football League has been less impacted by the pandemic so far, and while it said it's confident there will be a 2020 season, the camps that occur before then are all in jeopardy. Still, the league went ahead with free agency and its April player draft, albeit virtually, and without the usual crowds in the city where it takes place. People are so starved for sports that the draft drew record TV ratings for the first round, up 37% from last year. In spite of all of the uncertainty, demand for NFL tickets has been so strong, ticket prices have actually gone up. After the attacks on 9/11, professional sports leagues were forced to institute security measures to keep fans safe. Those measures included risk assessments, scalable security plans, communication protocols, and constant measurement of venue security programs. There must now be an equal effort towards health security measures.
You had to get accustomed to going through magnetometers to come into a sporting event like never before. In this case, you might have to subject yourself to a temperature scan or some other kind of health check initially.
Omega Family Office Chairman Leon Cooperman would go one step further.
I could see a year from today, when they have a vaccine, if you want access to a sporting event or to a concert, you're going to basically have to have a vaccination card showing that you've been vaccinated against the virus and to get access to these events.
The Miami Dolphins became the first NFL team to reveal plans that would eventually allow fans to attend live games, albeit with a much smaller crowd. Miami's Hard Rock Stadium generally holds about 65,000 people. The Dolphins would cut that number to 15,000. Fans would socially distance from one another, be required to wear masks, and have to order food from concessions before going upstairs to pick up their orders. When the game's over, they would have to exit the stadium one row at a time. Texas Governor Greg Abbott announced in late May that Texas would allow fans to attend outdoor professional sporting events. Attendance would be capped at 25% of capacity, and leagues would have to receive approval from the Texas Department of State Health Services. But what if someone who comes to the game infects other fans? Conway says teams will be protected from liability in much the same way baseball teams or hockey teams warn about flying baseballs or pucks, with the language on the back of the ticket.
The ticket that you buy on the back has a liability clause in there that pretty much protects them from just about any, unless there's some negligence to do that. Again, you could see organizations adjusting that to allow for this kind of a scenario.
During a call with sports commissioners in April, President Trump reportedly said he believed the NFL season could start on time this fall. He reiterated that desire several weeks later.
When I look at a baseball game, I want to see people right next to each other. I don't want to see 4 seats in between every person so that the stadium becomes 25% of its original size. No, I want to see the NFL with a packed house. I don't want to see NFL with 3 seats in between people. No, I want to go back to where it was. That's where we're going to be.
But a recent survey from Seton Hall University found that fans don't necessarily agree, at least not yet. According to the poll, 72% of fans said they wouldn't attend a sporting event until coronavirus vaccines are developed. 12% said they would if social distancing could be maintained. Only 13% said they'd feel as safe attending as they did in the past. Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti recently added that he didn't see sports happening in LA until at least 2021, although he didn't rule out a return without fans. But the final word may be left to the governors in each state, and if California is any indication, there's a good possibility the NFL won't start on time.
A well-known athlete just asked me, a football player, if he expects to come back. I said I would move very cautiously in that expectation. So, look, I'm not here to second-guess anybody, but I am here to say this. Our decision on that basis, at least here in the state of California, will be determined by the facts.
What it really comes down to is what makes owners, athletes, and fans comfortable. Will they feel better if there's a therapeutic treatment, or will they require a vaccine before they feel safe enough to attend games in person? Only time will tell.
We need sports. We need sports badly right now. We need something to cheer for, something to get excited about, something to be communal about. And, when the time comes and everything's safe, I'm sure we'll do it.